I think that there's definitely a blank space that's been untapped. And so I think that we're redefining healthy candy. Faves Fruit Chews is our first brand. Faves are made sweet from imperfect fruits and vegetables from farms. It's that 25% that goes unharvested. We found after building the ingredient company is like, okay, now we've got a supply chain. How do we show that proof of concept? And that's where Faves came from. We're saying, because you bought this, you've now rescued this many fruits and vegetables and offset this much CO2.
On top of all of the pressures that come from just operating a business, how do you find healthy ways to manage that pressure?
I think the two things that keep me up at night are more quality assurance at the factory and
Amy Keller is the founder of Climate Candy, a 7-time Ironman and 5th-generation candy maker redefining sweets, turning imperfect produce into purpose for people and the planet.
Are you a risk taker? Does your personality mean you're tenacious?
If you're not clear on that messaging, you can't change hearts and minds like she has. And remember, the future of business isn't just about Welcome to the Purpose Profit Shift, where real stories about bold shifts illuminate how we can create a new economy. I'm your host, Rachel Bernier-Green, social entrepreneur, activist, and founder of EJ Consortium, a finance consulting firm designed to help purposeful businesses change the world. Today's guest is Amy Keller, founder and CEO of Climate Candy, a company that's proving you don't have to choose between sweet treats and a sustainable planet. Amy took the impressive step of reimagining the confectionery industry from the ground up, building a business model where environmental responsibility drives innovation, not compromise. From navigating supply chain challenges to converting skeptical investors, she's living proof that purpose-driven businesses can compete and win, even in the most traditional industries. Amy has also been recognized as a 2025 Meaningful Business 100 winner, alongside other leaders delivering scalable, real-world solutions to complex social and environmental challenges. Evaluated by a panel of expert judges, Climate Candy was chosen from over 900 global nominations across 86 countries. Today, Amy joins us to share how Climate Candy is closing the gap between what consumers say they value and what they actually buy, all while building a thriving, profitable company. So let's dive in. Amy, thank you so much for joining me today.
thank you for having me.
But as we get started today, before Climate Candy existed, you were already living a fairly unconventional life. You were a 7-time Ironman. You come from a family of entrepreneurs, so you're kind of 5th generation. So take us back to that moment when you first realized that the candy industry and maybe business as usual needed to work differently.
Yeah, so I grew up around candy. I come from a family that owns a candy factory, Spangler Candy Company. And, we make 2 billion Dum-Dums every year, along with other nostalgic candies. So witnessing that power of candy, that instilling fun in any moment, I wanted to push it further, extend it upon, more than those individual moments, but into lasting impact. So, yes, I came from more of that climate consciousness, entrepreneurial endeavors. What can we do to save the planet? And had that opportunity to visit Svalbard, Norway, visiting the Global Seed Bank to learn about food security. And that's where I witnessed the UN installing generators due to climate change to keep the glacier refrigerated for all the backup seeds of the world. So it's
Yeah.
amazing how ideas for businesses can come from those type of experiences.
Absolutely. That's fascinating. So, and I know that most of our listeners probably are familiar with Dum Dums. I know I was very excited telling my husband earlier. I was like, yes, her family. And I'm like, they've made all of these candies you've heard of. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, Dum Dums.
Yeah.
So,
World's largest lollipop maker as of this
yes.
year. And make all the candy canes at Christmas and Neckos and Sweethearts at Valentine's Day, hitting all the seasonality around candy.
Yes, and it's iconic that we are recording this on Halloween because I
I
know,
know.
this is a big day for all of the candy that your family's company and your company produce. So, as we kind of jump into this, the first thing that I wanted to ask you is a lot of founders that I talk to, they fear that they'll have to compromise their mission to scale, and you've proven that wrong. Can you talk a little bit about I know you mentioned the kind of foundational experiences that led you to want to start the company, but how have you held true to your mission as you've gone through the process of scaling, raising funds, and those types of things?
Well, I think increasingly we expect our professional endeavors to line up with our values, interests, personal histories, and beliefs.
Yeah.
So I really wanted that clear, deeply satisfying answer around why did I spend all this time and effort producing this product and starting this company. And so when I decided to create Climate Candy, I determined I wanted to make a positive impact on people's lives and health and the health of the planet. So it's very
Yes.
consistent with my values and lifestyle, and it contributes to my personal goals and dreams, but it also affects lives beyond mine, right? So the world would be better off if I succeeded. So you're making that positive environmental impact. And also, in a way, what we do, educating people around getting their 5 to 8 servings of fruits and vegetables by making these fruit chews that we make out of our supply chain of imperfect fruits and vegetables sweet only with imperfect fruits and vegetables. So that's a real game changer versus all the fillers and sugars and things that are inside of, current fruit snacks that we're giving to people from ages 3 on up. So,
Right. Yeah. And so I actually love to pause here and give you an opportunity just to share with our listeners a little bit more about Candy, where you guys are sourcing from, where you're the products that you're making, and where they can find them.
so Faves Fruit Chews is our first brand. Faves are made sweet from imperfect fruits and vegetables from farms. It's that 25% that goes unharvested. So we're giving a full harvest to those farms. The farmers are finding that because of the strict standards of the grocery stores, they're not able to sell all of those root vegetables. And our base formula are carrots and beets and squash and sweet potato. And that's what's
Love that.
replacing that sugar and filler. And then, depending upon flavor, blueberry, raspberry, peach, mango, etc., that's how they're made into these yummy, real fruit chews. The supply chain was started because we started as an ingredient company. So we really wanted to show that others could do this, whether it's from where we are in California and the West Coast farms to the Midwest farms to the East Coast farms, and even looking at Europe and saying, what can be done across the globe, with that 40% of food globally wasted, and knowing that there's such a huge percentage, and especially here, 20 billion pounds of produce go to waste each year. And so we really wanted to focus on that, especially right now with climate change escalating. People
Yes.
are going hungry, and it's very unacceptable to waste so much food while we're running out of land, water, and healthy soil. What we
Absolutely.
found after building the ingredient company is like, okay, now we've got a supply chain. How do we show that proof of concept? And that's
Mhm.
where Faves came from. I'd say that, finding us, that's what really is interesting. We didn't do the usual. Yes, we have a direct to consumer site. Yes, we have a way to find us on Amazon and Thrive Market and other e-com, but we're really in food service. We decided we can make a real impact partnering with corporations after winning the Google Single Use Plastics Challenge, because we think of everything from seed to market, which includes
Yes.
our packaging. And then finding us in the Hudson Newses and WH Smith inside of travel
Mhm.
retail, finding us with airlines, finding us with hotels, finding us in stadiums, hospitals, university bookstores. So very, very different in that respect. But we're able to provide those companies with impact reports. And so every quarter, end of year, we're saying, because you bought this, you've now rescued this many fruits and vegetables. You've, rescued this much, water and cropland and offset this much CO2. So yeah, it's just an exciting thing to do it at that level.
I absolutely love that. And I'm hoping that we'll have time to come back to talk about those impact reports because I love both the path that you took to building the company. My previous food manufacturing company that I ran, we also did about 80% of our business around the food service channel, selling in bulk, wholesale versus doing branded endeavors. But also the fact that you have this clarity in your impact that you've been able to measure it and tell that story because I know that's something that a lot of the people listening struggle with. And
Yeah, exactly.
so as you've kind of grown your company very sizably, how do you maintain your environmental standards as you grow, and kind of what systems or policies did you put in place? And I think that kind of feeds into how you're able to build out these robust impact reports.
Yeah, I think that because of being in food service and having those partnerships, there's an understanding on what needs to be done. And the UN Sustainable Development Goals have been brought into a lot of these companies where they have their 1 and 5 and 10-year goals,
Yes.
right? So I think they're looking at how are we cutting food waste from all levels of food service, and what are we doing around our metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions, and in a way, you get your economic return. You're reducing your
Right.
food waste. And I think it also leads to several key co-benefits, right? You can look at it from climate justice, climate adaptation, water scarcity, biodiversity loss. Like there's so many things that like if people could realize their power and our highest potential solution to heal ourselves and the planet is what
Yes.
we choose to eat, and that includes all of us. That's been a way for us to really project that. So you can't really call yourself climate candy without thinking seed to market. So everything we do, from working with the ingredients to how we're manufacturing, how we're palletizing, what kind of boxes we're using,
Yes.
are they forest certified? So in a way, we're doing the supply chain. It's almost like that's our give back is exactly how the product is made.
And that's so crucial because I think as business owners, when we are thinking of ways to make an impact, particularly for businesses that might not, they might have climate initiatives, but they might not realize the power of taking a look at their supply chain. If they're shipping things out, who are they using as their shipping providers, where they're sourcing boxes from, how those boxes were created, all of that matters. And you mentioned a little bit earlier about winning a competition that I believe Google sponsored about plastic use.
Right. Yep.
Can you tell
So
us a
the
little bit
Google
about that?
single-use plastic challenge, and I think
Yeah.
for us, faves are truly good for the people who enjoy it, people who produce it, and
Yeah.
the planet we all share. And that was a very much a focus of Google. Like what are you doing in rooting that saving the planet around how you're packaging the product? So we tested everything from sending things in bulk to sending it in compostable, sending it in 100% PCR to craft paper, you name it, and making sure that we understood what was a high run rate so we could keep up, with the packaging, everything else to
Right.
be able to take on the contracts and it not being a slow process because you're not going to convince a co-man or a co-packer of doing something differently unless it can actually run at the same pace as what else is out there, and also to
Right.
understand that it's literally pennies on the dollar making those changes, to your packaging. So it really, from an economic standpoint, anybody should be able to switch things over to really think about the ingredient list and really think about the packaging. I'd say we're
Yeah.
a little bit different than most just because of where we sit, in regards to what's out there. But I think that there's definitely a blank space that's been untapped, whether it be in that fruit snack, alt sugar category. And so I think that we're redefining, healthy candy with a sustainable and food as fuel type health conscious brand.
Yes. And I love that you brought up the run rates and the co-manufacturing, and how you trialed out all of these products, because I think there's a pretty pervasive myth that sustainable business is actually more expensive and therefore not feasible for a lot of people. So do you think that's true, or do you think that's just kind of bad storytelling?
I think that if you look at the audience that's out there, there's 447 million eco and health conscious households. So if we're really building things for the consumer base and that audience, then it just makes sense. You're doing what's needed for those consumers.
Absolutely. I think your success is definitely a testament to that. So, can you talk a little bit more about the business model at Climate Candy and how sustainability has really created a competitive advantage for you and not just a cost?
I mean, the majority of our revenue comes from wholesale. So it's very different model,
Yeah.
versus, and then looking at the fact that we've got the larger product in the Hudson News at 4 ounce, and then the 1 ouncers size of faves is in the corporate offices. And the way I feel is it's like you've got the on the go executive. They're definitely not getting their 5 day servings of fruits and vegetables a day.
Absolutely.
How can we get them to have it for free in the office, buy it on the go and see it, in the airports, the hotels, the stadiums as they're experiencing things. So our supply chain is optimized in that way logistically to get it to the audience that needs it the most. But I think, like we said, technology is integral, and we are in with like the top manufacturers and co-packers that already are utilizing some of our top nations candy brands. So it
Yeah.
definitely presents us with opportunities for value creation and efficiency improvements that maybe some of the other plant-based candies, even though it's showing signs of explosive growth and we have pricing power, I think we're leveraging that strength of ingredients versus the more zeroed out labels that I think, helps us with that, nutrition content and education around fruits and vegetables.
Absolutely. So for listeners who were not familiar with Waves before, can you each of the 1 ounce packages, is there a full serving of fruits and veggies
Yes,
in there?
yeah. So 1 ounce is one serving of fruits and vegetables. So it's
Okay.
really easy, like on the go grab. And then the 4 ounce is 4 servings. And then we just tell people, like, you should get the rest of your servings from fruits and vegetables. So we've even told retailers, not that we're in retail, but how great would it be to put us next to some of those root vegetables and say, hey, if you like faves, fruit chews, you may like sweet potato, you may like
Yeah.
carrot. You'll realize that you're getting that fibrous and that sweetness from those vegetables.
Absolutely. And also thinking of a food service play, I'm thinking I'm the mother of a 3-year-old, and their school has food service where they are bringing in new pilot programs, even to try to introduce new ways to incorporate different artisan grains and things of that nature into the offerings at the school. And so hearing about, these candies that are incorporating all of these fruits and vegetables, it's just kind of making my heart happy that these options exist now.
Right, I agree. I think it's like if we can get people to understand that kind of farm to fruit snack and that sustainable circular food system utilizing imperfect
Yeah.
produce directly from farmers, the kids will understand where food comes from. I mean, unfortunately,
Yes.
so many kids are like, oh, I get the food at the grocery store, but then not understanding the seed to market point
Right.
of how it's produced to make something like faves that's real and nutrient
Yeah.
dense. And I think for us, yes, we're inspired by confectionery, but innovated by engineers. So, like, we
I
focus on
love that.
innovative equipment that can handle fruit and vegetable fibers to make
Right.
fruit snacks that are for the next generation. And that's why you even need to have the right equipment to make it work. And that's how you
Yes.
become innovative. You're providing a real strong case study to lead right now today in that functional food movement and a
Right.
future expansion that you could have with these large distributors.
I love that. And even with the connecting that storytelling piece, as you were sharing earlier and providing our listeners with the context around how much food is actually wasted in our conventional food system, because I don't think most people are aware, that that's the case, that this is a problem that we need to solve, that we, live in a country and in a world that is full of resources, and some of them are just going in the trash.
I agree. I mean, luckily, we're catching it at the farm level.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that you talked about how you've kind of had to redesign the equipment and the innovation and engineering that really goes into doing things differently. What would you say, as you've built Climate Candy, what has surprised you the most about building a profitable company that has purpose at its core?
I think probably the biggest surprise is that you're starting something innovative. You're really starting from the ground up. Didn't realize how many versions of candies we tried to disrupt over the years, but glad we did because now we're to the point where it's literally all fruits and vegetables and just a little bit of pectin to bind it and
Okay.
rice flour to go through the high run rate equipment. Whereas others, you couldn't get the percentage in. And just the surprising fact that there's so many things out there that are trying to be like candy, but when you're running something that's so small, that's 2 grams, you really can't start, from a kitchen or a co-op kitchen. You
Right.
really have to see if it can work through a factory machine.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you can't say, "Oh, here's the ingredient list, here's what I've made," in some co-op kitchen at a small scale. It's gonna be a completely different, ingredient list by the time you get
Right.
to the factory. So I am glad that we always were testing within factories. And really, it is tough for those entrepreneurs out there because these factories are only going to take a risk on maybe two entrepreneurs a year. So it can be very competitive, and for them to understand that you've got consumer demand and that you've got a timeline to get these sold into major players to give you that credibility.
Absolutely. And do you think that it helped be that your family, had been in the candy business for so long, so you'd seen these types of manufacturing operations and you were coming into it with that context versus an entrepreneur who maybe has never seen that type of high run rate manufacturing equipment?
It probably did, but then I think that, we could never utilize the equipment of that. So really had to make those hundreds of phone calls like any entrepreneur would have to, and really had to do a lot of that learning. And I think that's what the education's for. So when entrepreneurs are getting their first round of angel funding and doing their seed funding, and it's really about them and their leadership and their perspective on things.
Absolutely. And I love that kind of mentioned the candy industry is kind of old school and also that you've had to go through the fundraising process when you are doing something that is so drastically, different from a lot of your competitors. How did you convince, you know, traditional funders or distributors to take a chance on climate candy so that you were able to grow at this rate that you have?
I think that I was able to give conservative forecasts, projecting over the years, but also making them understand that this is a fast growing startup, and that we had opportunities that most don't in the food service arena after winning the Google Single Use Plastic Challenge and having opportunities immediately into, national airports and national accounts. I think emphasizing the commitment to financially sustainable expansion, really looking at, a testament to our effective capital utilization and value creation, and having a real clear operational plan. So trying to drive the gross margin growth, and what you're doing to, be that superior purpose driven product built from
Yeah.
scratch, right? And just knowing that there's a white space and there's increased brand awareness with food service. So it becomes more compelling from a financial profile supported by robust growth, but also having that passionate founder that's supported by a deep bench of advisors. There's just all this positioning you have to put out there to show that this is, definitely targeting, and supported by an aggressive market capture and really looking from our standpoint on wellness and sustainable food sector. So I think that we've definitely brought on value added partners to join in those financing rounds, and that's really helped us, and it's been underpinned by, what we've built as a model.
Yeah, and I love that you shared that the growth needed to be, fiscally sustainable. I think that one thing I often see with founders when they're starting is that they are struggling to figure out which advisors they need or what systems that they need in place so that they can accurately, manage their inventory, manage the costing of their production runs, that they are getting real time accurate information about their financials. How did you go about finding the right people to help you with those solid projections and to get the right financial kind of operating systems in place?
Yeah, I mean, it's really you're the average of the few people you spend the most time with, right? So
Yeah.
being able to take those advisors and have one for almost each area of function. I may understand operations or business development, but getting the right sales team that understands food service and has those connections, the right people that understand marketing and speaking to a sustainable product. I think that's been the key to everything, and really understanding the transportation and logistics side, because that's where things can go really wrong. Like where you're
Yes.
got these amazing national accounts, but when things aren't delivered on time, you're not paid on time. When things aren't delivered in an efficient way, you're putting off more CO2 emissions because you're moving things from too far away. So really thinking regionally around everything from your supply chain to start, but also then getting to the end product, to those clients. So I think that's been very purposeful on our side, is building that deep bench of advisors, but also getting those fractional employees that get
Right.
the ground running. They already have the contacts.
I think that that's absolutely key. Although, as a fractional employee, definitely a little bit biased.
Yeah, well, it's key when you've got the right, even like financial people and fractional CFOs, you're sharing them with other brands. So when
Yeah,
you're first starting off, you don't want to give up too much equity to C-level executives around you, and
right.
then they're not with you from the start. They don't stay as long. So why not work with those that are fractional so you share amongst a few brands? You're all paying for that person for that month on a basis of when you need them, which makes more sense than hiring an entire team of full-time workers to start,
Yeah.
and you don't have the sales and revenue to back it up.
Absolutely. It's definitely a timing issue. And I think that you starting with such a strong bench of advisors and having the right people in place that could speak to those things definitely was a phenomenal move and can make the difference between a company successfully scaling and one that struggles to get off the ground. So I'd love to switch gears a bit to talk about more of the kind of what it's like to be an entrepreneur and some of the pressures that come along with it. Especially purpose driven founders can often feel like they're carrying the weight of the world because we're literally trying to change the world and solve like complex environmental or social issues, on top of all of the pressures that come from just operating a business, which are significant on their own. So,
Mhm.
how do you find healthy ways to manage that pressure so that you're able to continue to operate effectively?
Well, I think that, hard work pays off, right? And from my early days in working in politics and ultra marathon and Ironman competitions and starting this company, I think that it prepares you better for success. You're definitely going 7 days a week, morning and night, and you can intelligently dissect any challenge quickly and efficiently to arrive at better results when you're used to that type of lifestyle. I think that it's one of those things where it's, are you a risk taker? Does your personality mean you're tenacious, or are
Yeah.
you, able to have that energy, and really, also pivot? I mean, think about when we were an ingredient company and saying, okay, fine, we'll show you the proof of concept. Like, and we've built this supply chain. So every day as a CEO and founder, you're having to be someone that's there and finding solutions to problems. And so, that can be tough. Now, the good news for people like me is like you just get out for a run, you do walk and talks with advisors, you don't do the
Yeah.
usual Zooms and phone calls all day long. You become a little
I
more
love that.
adventurous. You take risks, you take meetings, you meet with investors all over the world. You just take the risk and say, absolutely not. I'm not fearing this. I think the two things that keep me up at night are more quality assurance of the factory and making sure I've got
Yeah.
the right team to grow the business. So you have to thrive on adrenaline, love the rush as a competitor, whether it is
Yeah.
in sport or in work. So handling pressure, you're a startup CEO. You're under pressure for years. So you're succeeding every step of the way. Every day you're still in business, because they
Yeah.
say, they a lot of startups don't last that many years. So I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think the combination of being very competitive and definitely the connection of sports and business, has really, really helped them.
Oh, I absolutely agree. I think that the transferable skills from being an athlete, especially an athlete at the level that you are, and I love the idea of moving some of the meetings offline, just getting outside, doing the walk and talks. That is physical activity and sunshine can do so much to help avoid that emotional exhaustion that can come with running a business. So, I would love to ask kind of what is your vision for climate candy? So 5 years from now, what does climate candy look like? And what does the candy industry look like because you existed and made these innovations that you're making?
I'd say the key goals and milestones are sourcing, major airline and corporate food service contracts and expanding faves into D2C and online channels. I think revenue growth will definitely scale to healthy margins and, through this mix of channels. So Impact metrics for me are probably the biggest goals. Like, can we
Okay.
rescue 50 million imperfect produce? Can we prevent packaging and CO2 emissions through these upcycling partnerships? Can we look at verified climate data tracking and figure out through operations, can we achieve positive unit economics, but also, and reduce COG, like our cost of goods, but further, the side of climate with our manufacturing partners and definitely reach the company profitability each year.
Oh,
I'd say for the long-term vision, it's really, like I said, redefining the future of healthy candy, setting a precedent for how products can contribute to circular systems and regenerative economies. We really want faves to be known as the number one upcycled or rescued produce product and have a portfolio of climate positive confections, and really build out those regional manufacturing hubs so that then we can benefit
yeah.
those produce suppliers across the country. So really that's what I think could be really exciting is, how can we establish that certified climate beneficial company and
Yes.
build market share, improve new category creation.
I love that. And as you were talking about the idea of, potentially expanding into more direct to consumer channels, what kind of what do you think the role will be of the storytelling of your impact? So, like you've been sharing about the context behind the like problems that you're solving, and it's one thing to communicate these to the wholesale clients, a completely different animal when you're talking about selling this in a retail or other direct to consumer channels. So, how do you think your approach may switch as you expand in those areas?
I think there's a rising demand for sustainable CPG products.
Absolutely.
They say that half of shoppers are prepared to stop buying their favorite brands if they don't commit to measuring their product's carbon footprint, etc.
Hmm.
And I think that if we keep things simple and faves are this educational moment around what is in your food and the need for people to get their 5 to 8 servings of fruits and vegetables per day,
Yeah.
I think that's the real focus is like the front of the pack is like health of people and the back of the pack is like, oh, and look what you've done for the farms, and then see what that's done from a climate standpoint.
I love that. Some of my favorite brands, I love when I make a purchase and it tells me, over time, with the money you've spent with the brand, these are all the impacts of the purchases that you've made. And so I definitely agree, and all of the data backs it up that this is going to be an explosive market moving forward. One of the things that you mentioned was that keeps you up at night is about quality control. So I want to go back to that for a moment to see if especially right now, given some of the things that are happening, like with the FDA and food regulation in this country, do you think that that will impact your quality control processes, or is that not having an impact for climate candy at all?
No, I think we're fine. I mean, we
Okay.
picked the right partners. We only utilize fruits and vegetables that then are made into powders and purees and juices. I think it's just the end product to make sure that as you're running hundreds of thousands of units, that everybody's getting the top presented faves
Yeah.
fruit chew, and making sure that we keep up with the demand of new flavors and understanding what each generation wants so we can get the interest of those generations so they get the classics or the new flavors. And I think, you're utilizing real fruits. So
Yeah.
obviously any new flavor has to be something real. But for us, it's we're just in those early phases. But yeah, it's a matter of having those partnerships, understanding that you have SQF audited facilities
Yes.
that are focused with the FDA and USDA. Like we've done all of that. It's just that you're not running your own factory as a startup. So you have to
Right.
make sure you have really good relationships with those that you partner with across the country.
Absolutely. So, what would you say if every business in the candy industry, if they made similar shifts and they were operating like yours, how would the world look differently?
I would say that the world will look differently because we wouldn't be wasting so much food. I think we've given so much opportunity around, like me reading Drawdown by Paul Hawken and learning that 40% food grown globally is wasted. That's why I wrote the company business plan. I think that it gives us an opportunity to inspire others in this community that are willing to take action and eager to
Absolutely.
learn and be inspired to leverage their own business to make real change. I think if we adopted those tools, we're not only inspiring our own community, but it could be global in scope. Things that can start in one region of the world, in the US, et cetera. That's the proof of concept. So anyone can do that. It's just a matter of then bringing the education and storytelling around what does upcycling mean in a global
Yeah.
community, and what do those powerful partnerships and great storytelling and combined network mean in the end. So I think for me, it's more about the usage of food, that there's nothing wasted along the way and along that value chain. And I think that's why we are a global innovator for ReFed, and we're part of the Upcycled Food Association, because we can't go and do policy change, but there's organizations
Right.
that are out there, for the farmers, or helping industry or corporate with, their channels and their food waste. So we do our part, but we make sure we partner with others so that then,
Yeah.
yes, the world can be very different, years from now.
I love that. And if there are other aspiring food manufacturing entrepreneurs listening, and they want to build a business that also has a very strong environmental purpose, what advice would you give them in terms of getting started? Things that you wish you would have known, or things that you're glad you did know when you were starting?
I'd say that if you're first starting off, to understand that you can put together an idea and really do anything you put your mind to. I mean, ours formulated as just an idea. And then as you do the research and you figure out the viability, I think that's key. And then making sure you've got the right people around you advising you, have that table of, bench of advisors. I think that has been always helpful to me, that have done it before. They understand what resonates strongly with consumers. They know what brands and retailers are doing, what their traits are. I think that's the secret to success. And not only that, but just love something so much that you can't wait for the sun to rise again and do it all over again. So you have to realize, the time and effort that goes into starting something, or understanding like what you can do within this company you're currently working at. How can you add value and do something that you really believe in, and even make a bigger stamp because you're working inside of a large company?
Absolutely. So, as we are winding this episode down, is there anything else that you would like to leave with listeners about your work, or ways that they can connect with you so that they can continue to be inspired by your story and support what you're building?
I say it's a very complicated world out there. People only remember so much about us. So
Yeah,
we really need to be clear for what we stand for. This world evolves very fast. And so you have to rely on mission to unlock your differentiation. And that's your like power to move people's hearts and minds in a positive way.
I love
So, like us, we think Phase is this amazing product, amazing idea in the world. But if people can't understand the problem you solve, they'll never buy into it. And so I think that's really important to understand, that every part of your world, whether your operations are great, if you don't have the right marketing and sales, et cetera, you have to make sure that all those cogs in the wheel work, so
right.
that people understand why you're doing what you're doing and why you're redefining a category. And for us, we're able to do something that's not really in any Venn diagram. We're just trying to say, look, we're working with these farmers. This is a way for you to be healthier, get you to your 5 to 8 servings of fruits and vegetables. We're not nostalgic candy. We're not really the current fruit snacks. We're not the alt sugar snacks. We're something very new and different, because we focus completely on that climate side, that lower carbon footprint, sustainable packaging, and upcycled ingredients. And I feel like that's what's differentiated in categories that have yet to be disrupted. And
Yeah.
that's what we are bringing with Faves.
Yeah, it very much reminds me of the book Blue Ocean Strategy, that you're creating this new wide open space instead of going head to head with these other options that may have come from similar motivations, but are approaching things in radically different ways from the way that you've chosen to go about things. Love that. Your story and what you've built, from creating climate candy to launching this brand, And especially, I love how you responded when you started as an ingredient company, and how you responded to, okay, well, that's nice that you have an ingredient company, but kind of like, who's going to buy this? Where does it go next? And you said, actually, I have an answer to that, and did not let that stop you and continue to innovate to make this change. So I want to thank you, Amy, so much for joining us today. And I hope everyone listening that if you walk away with just one thing, that you remember to be tenacious and passionate about the work that you're doing. And like Amy said, that you take the time to really look into the viability of your product and really understand the impact that you're trying to make. Because if you're not clear on that messaging, you can't change hearts and minds like she has. And if this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to the Purpose Profit Shift wherever you get your podcast, and join us next time as we continue exploring what's possible when business becomes a force for justice, sustainability, and profit. And remember, the future of business isn't just about what you build, it's about who you become in the process and who you bring along with you. So until next time, keep shifting.